Next, Vik Bangia took the stage, and now I've heard Vik speak many times before, and in fact, I met him over a year ago when he was a guest on my old podcast, which you should check out, by the way. He spoke about practical ways to manage change and how to work with influencers inside of our organizations to really get things done. But first, he shared a little bit about his consulting philosophy.
So I created Verum Consulting to be a force for truth, and I developed a process that's actually an acronym of the company, Verum, which stands for Validate Assumptions, Eliminate Obstacles, Recast Expectations, Unveil a New Strategy, and Manage the Implementation. And we'll talk a little bit about that, the mechanics of that process and why it's a really good catalyst for change management a little later. But first, I just wanted to basically to appreciate why change management and developing strong coalitions is important. We first need to understand the trends that are shaping the workplace change. One positive trend that I see, and the gist of my talk today is going to be the efforts to humanize the workplace experience with a greater focus on collaboration, wellness, and technology, all designed to be vehicles for innovation and employee engagement. And the technology piece is really what's most important, especially important, because I think that we're at sort of a point of departure which has two distinct paths. One path, and I think the one that we'd all subscribe to, is that the workplace experience, the technology that undergirds that, is really good and really helpful for employee engagement. But the other path, and the path that I don't think we should want to go down, is tech for tech's sake. And that technology path really creates challenges because there's only two outcomes for a path like that. The first one is disintermediation, right? Where technology eliminates the resources and the skill sets within your company and actually makes the critical support functions challenging. So if you think about tech for tech's sake and disintermediation, you can think of things like IoT and building automation and AI. The other factor, our outcome, is technology that doesn't actually do what it's supposed to do. So you can think about things like, well, IoT, building automation, and AI, but also things like driverless vehicles and pilotless aircraft, any of those things that if they don't work, you could be in a huge world of hurt. But the path where technology actually enhances the employee experience does bode well for all of us in the room. And what it does is it mandates that we're all really good change managers. So let me ask you this question. How many of you like change? All right, I'm going to ask it a different way now. How many of you like change when it's imposed upon you? See? None of the hands went up, right? How many of you like change when you're actually in charge of the change? Okay, so now we're getting somewhere, right? How many of you like the things the way they are? Like the status quo? Okay, so you're saying that you want change. You don't want change imposed upon you. You want to be in control of the change. But the truth is that deep down, nobody really likes change, except for maybe this wet baby. This is the next idea, which is rooted in systems thinking. And how many of you have taken courses in systems thinking? Few? Okay, good. So you'll recognize some of this. You know, think of the environment that you're working in to create change as a system, right? And I like to compare it to the game of Jenga. How many of you play Jenga? All right, so you haven't taken systems thinking, but you played Jenga. So you have taken systems thinking. Because really what you need to do is think about how one thing affects another. So if you think about everything on this list, this is about how one thing affects another. How does the system itself generate behavior? If you're in a very bureaucratic system, if you're in a system where nobody challenges authority, how is that going to affect behavior? How is that going to have outcomes that may be negative or challenging? Those are things that you have to sort of unwind, but it's important to understand how the system generates behavior. And you need to take a look at the different perspectives. So you want to get all the way down to the individual level and say, how do you perceive this? How do you perceive this? To kind of get an understanding of whether there is a solid monolithic approach to things or if there's a lot of individual perspectives that are different. You have to understand there's tension. You have to remove that tension. You have to make that environment safe and anonymous and comfortable. Give people a place where they can voice their opinions, respectfully have conflict. And then make change that allows for a shorter time between the change itself and the results. It's no good to have some change initiative take place and then you don't see results for 2 years. People just get bored or they'll get disinterested or they'll be able to say, see, nothing happened, right? It's got to be immediate. So look for ways to make small changes that have immediate impact. Also, think about unintended consequences. It's real easy to put a box around the organization that you're doing working with for a change initiative without understanding what impact that's going to make to other organizations. So the broader you can go through a set of questioning, where you have ramification type questions, that's a really important aspect to systems thinking. Also, see if there's modes of this ingrained thinking where it might be false, but everybody seems to have that same way of thinking, and see if you can challenge that by asking a lot of what if questions. And what you'll end up doing is you'll continually successively approximate where your boundaries are for making this change. And as long as they're wide enough to give you satisfaction that this change is going to be meaningful, then I think you're in good shape.
Fun times at the conference with Vik Bangia. And you know what else was a lot of fun? Between speakers and during the break times, I got to put on my DJ Mike P hat, and I was in charge of the music playlist, the background tunes that played while everyone was networking and grabbing food and whatever else was going on throughout the day. So I was ready. I put together this massive, 7-hour Spotify playlist. Maybe I'll leave a link for you in the show notes so you can check it out. And yes, it was heavily loaded with some 80s classics, of course, but I also included some music from earlier eras and some modern day hits. I tried to cover all the generations, since as you know, we have 4 of them working together side by side in today's workplace. And Vic talked about this, the generational differences when it comes to adapting to and adopting new technologies. He referenced the fact that the clock on his VCR was still flashing 12 o'clock, which was kind of funny. But that reference needed to be explained to some of the younger folks in the crowd. He also gave me a shout out by bringing up some music. Also sang a little bit of The Who for me. Thanks, Vic. That was great. Talking about my generation. It certainly got a few laughs, that's for sure.